to the Nerdiverse. Go ahead, sit and listen to the masters, the old heads, talk about what you love the most. Video games, comics, movies, and everything you need to maintain your week. Got the knowledge that's straight out the ether. Gonna need a drink and have to take a seat to expand your mind and listen to the speaker. Mike and the squad's gonna give you what you need. Please send in the question, come and get some answers, learn a couple lessons from the masters with the special guests. We got the green lanterns glowing on their chest. Yes, please sit back and relax, cause we're gonna hit you with them stone cold facts. And allow me to be the very first to welcome you to the masters of the Nerdiverse. Welcome back to the Masters of the Nerdiverse, where we always have such sights to show you. I'm, of course, your host, Mike G, and back with me is MOTN alum and our resident keeper of the Jedi Code and librarian of the Jedi text, Brian himself. He's back.
Yo, what up? It's good to be back. It's been a minute, and it is just great to see you and great to be back. So thank you very much for having me here for this conversation that you wanted to have.
Absolutely. And let's set the record straight right now, because this is going on YouTube. And everyone's in every Star Wars Super Turbo Labyrinth is going to see this and probably pick apart every wrong thing we say. And that's okay. This is a conversation, not an evaluation. And I just want to make sure that that's clear. And if we miss any interesting things or you have any fun little tidbits you love to leave in the chat, please do. This is a conversation. So we want to have it amongst ourselves and also amongst the Nerdiverse. That being said, this is a brand new segment for Masters of the Nerdiverse, something me and Brian have been talking about for a couple of weeks now. MOTN lore. We're going to pick out particular, I would say, artifacts of power within the Nerdiverse, like anything from Luke Skywalker's lightsaber to the belt of Dolomite, the belt of Pootie Tang. You know what I mean? We're gonna talk about it all.
There you go. Everything in the middle. I mean, those are two drastic separations, so that's cool. Bring me on for the Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, of course we're going to have to go over like He-Man's sword and you know what I'm saying? And Cerebro from the X-Men. We could talk about all of it. And what's cool about it is we're going to have a ranking. At the end of this, we're going to rank it, how powerful it is within the lore in the Nerdiverse. So it could S ranking to F ranking.
Well, I got to tell you, you picked one, man, because not only is it rare in the universe, you know, it's stupid powerful, or it can be.
I love it. And with that, we're going to bring in our topic for today, which is in the universe of Star Wars, which is a Sith Holocron. These things,
Holocron, man.
I've been obsessed with them ever since I learned about them. I want one. Do you? Let's talk about it. Do you? So for those who don't know, because this is something that's not very heavy in the movies, it's not very heavy in overall pop culture, but the Star Wars heads know. So what exactly is a Sith Holocron?
Well, a Sith Holocron is can be a wealth of knowledge that has been passed down from someone who was very powerful or someone who claimed power and learned the ways to make it. Or, it could just be a random trinket if you don't know what you're doing with it. It could just be a mantelpiece. But as we've learned in the Star Wars universe, and, one of the reasons I say you picked an interesting topic is because when you talk canon, we haven't seen a lot of it. We've seen some very specific episodes, but it is more deeply rooted in the Legends arena. And so, as we're building out this Star Wars universe, I'm actually... Did we see one in Acolyte? Did they talk about one? I don't think so, which is kind of weird.
It's funny. I was thinking of how many live action did we have any live action interpretation of a holocron? And it's only once, actually. And I just learned this yesterday doing my research. Is that it's in the back, it's like a trinket in the back of a Andor episode. It's in the back. You can see like a little Sith holocron, a
You
deactivated
can
one.
in the dude's shop. Yes,
Hmm.
there is one back there. Now that you mention it, I had not remembered that till you said it. So, yeah, no, it is very rare in live action. We mostly saw it and heard about it. I believe it's season 3 of Rebels
Yeah.
with Maul and Ezra, and thus and Bendu, who happens to be the original creator of it, which I did not know. Well, the Bendu, not the Bendu we saw. Well, I guess I don't know.
Right.
So when you talk about a Sith Holocron, essentially what you're looking at is finding a book which is magically sealed, and only those with the power of the Sith can open it,
It's interesting.
supposedly.
It's interesting because it reminds me of almost like the lament configuration, right? From Hellraiser, where
Ah,
if you don't know what it is, it's just a trinket, it's just a toy. But if you know of it, and you know what its purpose, and you have the particular desire and power to open it, you'll learn its secrets, good, bad, or ugly. You know what I mean? And I think that's
and
interesting. Yeah.
and much like it, learning the secrets of the dark side often brings terrible, terrible consequences that hopefully you can handle.
But if you're a Sith, you worry about that later. You don't worry about that now,
I mean, if you're a Sith, you're looking forward to the challenge to prove yourself that, I am the strongest.
100%. And speaking of like the strongest in Sith ties, and there are holocrons in the Star Wars universe that are Jedi holocrons as well. But Sith holocrons, in its importance to the lore, I find more interesting because they almost take on a completely different, I would say, behavior than a standard holocron or a Jedi holocron. So now I'd like to talk about their importance to the lore. Like, it's because they're so behind the scenes, you would think the importance was low. But no, like behind every good Sith is a Sith holocron, apparently, right?
I mean, if you're talking about the entirety of Star Wars being all media platforms or all transferring different types of mediums, you're talking that we don't get to the the rule of two if Bane does not come across Revan's uh, holocron. And I'm
Yeah,
like, so what are we talking about? Yeah, Sith holocron. So yeah, so we don't even get that. We don't get here. We don't get the Palpatine and Vader if that doesn't happen in the entirety of it. So its importance is up there.
100%. And even across the old Republic and even the new Republic, Sith holocrons have shaped wars. It have shaped Jedi. Because they're so powerful and their influence is so strong. They've actually, I would say, enslaved weaker Jedi to the dark side of the Force and enticed them just in their nature. You know what I mean? So a lot of things don't happen without them, like you said.
There's actually a story. Dang it, I hadn't thought about it till you just mentioned it. There's actually a story. I want to say Luke and Lando, the most recent book. Sorry, I don't have that reference, but I'm sure I'll get it to Mike and he'll put it in the notes below. But essentially, what ends up happening is there's a expedition of archaeologists, and there's this one kid, and he's like, "I'm gonna go off over here," and so he walks into this cave, and he comes across the holocron, and he's like, "Ooh, what's this?" And essentially, the holocron just possesses him.
Quickly.
You're mine now. And
Yeah.
so the kid starts acting all whack, and Luke happens to be there, and Luke's like, "Well, this is weird." And then all of a sudden, the story proceeds. But just the wrong person coming across a Sith holocron can be bad, unlike what we see with Jedi holocrons or good holocrons, where you're not going to stumble upon being possessed if you pick one up.
100%. And that's a good segue into just the overall creation of a holocron is drastically different than a Jedi holocron in regards to what needs to be done and the steps that need to be taken to essentially embody the spirit of a Sith Lord, and not even just a standard Sith Lord, but a highly powerful Darth Bane level Sith Lord has to channel their pretty much download their brain into this thing so that they can partake in the secrets of the Sith. And it's like, yes, it's a Rosetta Stone, but it's a Rosetta Stone that talks to you. It's a Rosetta Stone that whispers sweet nothings into your ear and begins the corruption. And I think it's super fascinating just how these things are made. And it's like, yeah, this is no small feat. You need like the most rare metals and things of the galaxy, and you need this, and you need that, and you need to create a Horcrux of your soul, pretty much, to get this thing locked in. Not a lot of people did it, but those who did were able to pretty much technically, quote unquote, live forever, I would think, right?
Well, it depends on the knowledge that they find. So essentially, they are a guide. They come with a guide. So I also hadn't thought about this till right now, but you look at Rebels, that Sith Holocron, that Ezran Ball, that should have technically had a guide, and it had, you know, in essence, but we never saw the figure. So when Bane is going through his explanation of or exploration of trying to learn how to make one of these, you know, he's watching his guide and he's like, oh, okay, and he's putting together. And so essentially when he creates his own, you know, that comes with the image of Darth Bane, and so they're talking to you. So the essence of making one is insanely difficult. Bane was in meditation for days on in at the peak of his power, and just the simplest mistake
Starts it all over.
the entire thing.
Yeah. What do you like? But is it worth it? Yes, because it shapes galaxies. You know what I mean?
Well, you get to take your knowledge and, you know, put it into the storage device, and that's one of the things I found fascinating about it that they didn't get into, at least in the Legends end of it that I'm aware of, is the storage capacity. You're literally talking like, all right, so everything I know is going to go into this thing, which also, as a Sith, it's like, well, rule of two, Bane, why are you creating this when you have Xana? But different story for a different day, different conversation.
Yeah, I think he had Plan B is like what I like to call it, Plan B. And it's not only their knowledge, right? It's their dark side essence is also imbued in this thing, because like you were mentioning, like that kid who happened upon it and just got possessed in 2 seconds. These things are so powerful that they emit a dark side, almost miasma in their sphere of influence, enough to make Jedi sick, enough to kill plants. They're just bad news. But if you're a Sith person, they're the best thing you can find. It's like finding gold. It's literally the best thing you could use if you're Sith adjacent.
And that's one of the stories, or I think that Star Wars could delve into, is how after the Jedi Sith War, like how the Jedi cleaned up, much like how Palpatine cleaned up all essence of Jedi, how the Jedi went and took all of these holocrons and they're like, yeah, dark side, we're getting rid of that.
Mhm.
So we did see the Palpatine side of that in essentially Order 66, which is one of the most tragic things ever. But, well, not ever. Cut that out. And
No, that's fine. It is. Order 66 is the most tragic.
It's betrayal on a different level, bro.
Yeah, it's trauma. Like everything past Order 66 is just dealing with post-traumatic stress. You know, and every single story is just that until it stops being a conversation, and that's more towards the original trilogy. But everything, if you look at any story, even Ahsoka, even Boba Fett, it's all dealing with the aftermath of that horrid night. You know what I mean? And, and Darth Plagueis going around and Darth Sidious rather, going around and cleaning up all of the Jedi taking over Jedi archives and retrofitting them to be Sith bases. It's dirty work, man. You know what I mean? But that's what you do when you win, right?
That's why you got Vader, and Vader's got his people. So go deal with that. All right.
Speaking of that, we've been talking about it a bit, but I did want to take a moment to focus on the dark side influence. And one of the things that in our discussions you wanted to really talk about was the consequences of that influence. Just not just pretty much it as a tool, but it as almost like a career path. Almost it's like you gotta get every little bit that comes with playing with these things. And I'm surprised Ezra was strong enough to resist it. I'm not very familiar with Rebels, and I lean on you for more than that. But how strong in the light side of the force do you need to be to not be seduced by a holocron?
Well, this actually goes back to one of our questions earlier when Ahsoka had just ended, and you're like, is Ezra evil? And you're going, well, I mean, maybe, because you look back on this photo right here, and there's a moment when Kanan looks at Ahsoka as he's like, here, I got this Sith Holocron, and he just shakes his head. He's like, yeah, don't tell him exactly what that is, because like, how are you even dealing with this
With
in the
that,
first place?
yeah,
So, and then for him and Maul to get connected to it and then share information, you have me wondering post Ahsoka, well, did something touch Ezra?
mm,
We
yeah,
don't know. We haven't went there, and that's in the future. But when you talk about its influence, my knowledge leads me to that question of, yeah, something could have absolutely touched Ezra, whatever voice that was that Ezra was listening to, because I do not believe that was made clear when she, and it was a she, was giving him the power to send the walker off the edge of the cliff. And Sabine's like, Kanan didn't teach you that. And he's like, no, he
nah,
didn't. And it's like,
mm-mm.
oh, all right,
sus
well.
sus alert. You know what I mean? And it's oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah,
Well, so when you look at just even that little bit of learning, you have to assume he's in some way been touched. And, you know, uh, Luke kind of went through this same thing when he was messing with the dark side, and it's like he got a little touched. So, what essentially that evolves into, we don't know. But to get touched and not completely devolve in the dark side, you got to be pretty dang strong, man.
and
You
I
got to be pretty dang strong.
you know what they say, like every true test of a Jedi is to in almost in tune with their dark side, because everyone has a dark side. But you have to face your dark side, so to speak, like Luke in the cave, right?
Yeah.
You have to kind of face that. And maybe Ezra, that was part of him facing his dark side of the force, was in tuning with this device that's giving him untold secrets of the force. And like you said, maybe a little bit of that dripped into him and gave him a little bit of a power boost. Is maybe it's like that was my question, because he was acting super strange in Ahsoka. You know what I mean?
I
And
didn't
I'm
catch it, but when you
yeah.
said it, I was like, well, I mean, if you wanted to have room for it, you could probably make some room for it. That's for certain.
And one thing, and we're going to go into it with our next segment, I believe, in regards to influence. I just think it's super fascinating how even the most pious Jedi could be influenced by this thing and not even know it. That you know what I mean? And that's kind of going to go into our next topic, which is kind of like, and actually it's the next topic after, so I'll save it. But I wanted to kind of really go into the secrets of the Sith and how powerful these things are, just in regards to the transference of information, not just by picking up a book and reading it, but literally it downloading into your mind and kind of just giving you automatic I know kung fu type secrets that like Ezra just could
Matrix type
utilize.
secrets.
Yeah, he just utilized it without much training. He didn't have to practice it. He just kind of just did it. That's creepy. I think that you can just access this knowledge and just be like, Darth Plagueis was just like, okay. I mean, I always mix up Plagueis and Sidious. No, I was right. Plagueis, when he was kind of trying to build his own, he was learning from other Sith to kind of figure it out. You know what I mean? And just automatic download of information is quite interesting to me, and the secrets
Well,
therein.
I mean, that's kind of the benefit of being the most powerful is you got all the secrets. And when you talk about specific secrets that were found, well, I mean, the rule of two was one because it was a powerful secret in the fact that at that time in Legends, the Sith had evolved into pretty much just a Jedi Order only made up of Sith. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? They had a bunch of rules and bylaws and people in charge, and they talked about a lot of stuff. And Bane was like, yo, I don't, this isn't what the man said. And so he took it upon himself when he started looking around and going, well, this isn't cohesive to power,
Right.
and thus he gained power by following that original blueprint that was laid out for him. So he also was able to find uh, magic that he wasn't able to use, but Xana was able to use. And this magic, like, jumped off the page. Like, it made you. Who's the dude from Batman? It makes them see their horrors and whatnot. So
Scarecrow. Yeah, Scarecrow. Hmm.
yes, yes, it scarecrows him, and Bane's like, "Yeah, here's some knowledge. I can't use it, but I saw it. I think you can use it." And she's like, "Oh, all right."
Yeah.
She straight up wrecked him, and yeah, man, that's the power.
Interesting. You know what I mean? Just I can't use it, but I can teach others to use it. It's almost just as deadly as him using it, right? Because that's his apprentice. That's his underling. You
And
know
he
what I mean?
knows what's coming. You know what I'm. They didn't discuss it. At least I haven't read that third book yet, where it concludes. So they may discuss it, but he would have to have protected himself from it. And I'm sure that in the holocron itself, they would have explained that. I mean, again, I want one. Where can I find one?
Now, with
Well,
holocrons, are they accepting to are they accepting to be dominated by a Sith presence, or are they just as vitriolic to Sith as they are to Jedi?
straight up, yeah, straight up rage and hate and anger. Those
You almost kind of like you have to tame it, right? You kind of have to
and
tame those things.
and those that don't have necessarily essences, they have traps, like when Bane got the Orbalist stuck to him. He's like, "Oh, I want this holocron." So he reaches through, grabs it. Orbalist is like, "Oh, I'm just going to live on you now." And yeah, it made him more powerful, and he got that holocron and all that knowledge, but he was literally in pain 24/7 because it was feeding off of him.
Symbiotic
And he
relationship.
and Bane's thought process was, yeah, well, the knowledge is worth it. So
It's like this face hugger rules, man. Like
and and that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of both Bane and Plagueis, is because they were such bookworms. They were the dudes who were straight up like, "Let me go find the holocron." I think seeing Palpatine's relationship with them would be super interesting too, because Palpatine, he wasn't necessarily in the book power; he was into militaristic power.
yes,
You know what
different
I
thing.
mean?
Hmm.
Different things. So it's like, which ones were important to you? And let's hear some of those stories.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned the different the different pursuits of power, the different ambitions. Like I want to learn every single thing about the Sith and how they operate. I just want to rule the galaxy with an iron fist, and a holocron can be the solution for one or the other. You know what I mean?
You found the right one,
You,
absolutely. And
you
what's
find the
what's
right
straight
one.
the Sith organization at the time did not even know holocrons were cruising around. They thought the Jedi just cleaned them all up. It was literally Bane's determination to go, there has to be more knowledge out
Ah,
there. And, you know, I can appreciate that.
interesting, interesting. Um, I want to talk about this for a second, and this is just we've been talking about Darth Bane, and we've been talking about Darth Sidious and Darth Plagueis as users, but I want to talk about the users of the Holocron, like specific lore adjacent people who have been touched by holocrons canonically. And one of my favorite stories is of a character in Knights of the Old Republic 2, which is, I believe her name was, I was just reading about her earlier today. It's going to kill me. Give me 2 seconds. I have to find her name. She was a I was just looking her up. She was a Sith. No, she was a Jedi librarian. She was a Jedi historian. One second. I'm just going to pull up her name. While I pull this up, who are some of your favorite outside the ones we spoke of? Anybody else that comes to mind in regards to like just users of holocrons?
Honestly, I am a big Bendu fan, and Bendu, when Kanan gave Bendu the holocron, Bendu looked at it and he's like, "What's this?" And Kanan's like, "It's very dangerous," and Bendu just laughs. He's like, "Yeah, okay, if you say so." And so for me, it's you talk about the people who could rule the holocron, but what type of being are you to be able to mess with the holocron, both light and dark, and to simply laugh it off? And yeah, the knowledge. This isn't knowledge. Oh well, what do you got? So
Right.
you know,
Yeah, and I think I was able to find the person I was looking for. And
uh,
Bendu's definitely awesome example, but the one that I was just enamored by was Atris from Knights of the Old Republic too.
actress.
Yeah, Atris was a Jedi historian during the times of the Battle of Exar Kun and the Mandalorian Wars, where she was highly pious in the way of the Jedi, burying herself in the Jedi text of old, and feeling like the Jedi of now were just kind of a bit more laxical. They're a bit, lazy in their Jedi. They should be more strict, right? Um, so during that time, the Jedi Council had decided that, we're not going to interfere with the Jedi's civil war. We're not going to interfere with the Mandalorian war. And she saw everybody kind of go to battle, including Revan and Malik. And her decision is like, okay, the way I'm going to help with this is actually tell the coordinates of a Jedi base to the Sith to wipe out those Jedi so that I can create my own Jedi order the way I think it should be ran. And after that, she gathered many holocrons because she felt, I'm so light side, I'm so powerful that I can just deal with these and learn from them too. I'm going to be an historian across the board. And she didn't realize after years and years that she was being corrupted just as anybody else would. But because she was so blind and so almost sure of herself, she was being manipulated the whole time by these holocrons who are having her do Sith-like things under the gaze of Jedi, of Jedi expectations. And it didn't take until Darth Treya, to say, nah, man, you're totally Sithed out. You need to come to that realization. Like, no, you don't see what you're doing. Do you hear what they're telling you? Literally, this woman sits in a room filled with holocrons, like dozens of them. And they're all whispering to her at the same time. Like she's turbo corrupted, but she just can't see it because she's so pious, because she believes she's so right. I'm so right. I've never been wrong ever. It took a Sith Lord to call out a Sith Lord.
And essentially, one of those holocrons is like, yeah, I'm always right. And they have, seeped in. And thus, like the power, when you look at the Jedi Temple and why only masters were able to walk into the deepest, darkest forges of the Jedi archives, is because all that power was hanging out. And we have to ask ourselves, who has touched these things? We know Luke has had a little bit of experience. We know Ezra's had a little bit of experience. Has a Thrawn come across the holocron? You know what I mean? And thus, how much of this knowledge and power is still being seeped out? And considering we get almost no
Information.
Vader, Palpatine type of holocron, real stories. We don't know. We don't know what they found. We don't know what they did with them. You know what I mean? We know Luke has found some stuff, but we don't know. And thus, people could be using the holocron now.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I think it would be interesting in the time between, let's say, A Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi. What was Palpatine doing that whole time? Trying to make his own holocron. Why not? It would make sense that a keeper of holocrons, he collected them himself. Why would he try to make his own holocron in the situation that he may die, so that the dark side of the Force can live on? You know what I mean?
Well, and essentially he was planning to live on. So maybe
Yeah.
he did not. You
Maybe
know
he
what I
didn't.
mean? But at the same time, Plagueis was obsessed with information, quote unquote, his master. I know legends. Don't beat me up in the comments, folks. I get it. I'm going to live with what we saw in Acolyte and just string it together until someone tells me differently. Okay?
Correct. Right. That's all you can
So
do.
there you go.
That's all you can do.
Right. Right.
Man, it's interesting. Like, these things are just so, the curiosity is just so fascinating. I just love the idea of these ticking time bombs, like you were saying. Who's touched them? How much influence has there been? Could Luke's attack on Ben Kenobi in The Last Jedi, Ben Holocron, influenced? Could that have seeped into his mind? You know what I mean? Where did this idea come in the first place? Are these Jedi ticking time bombs of Sith loyalty?
In fact, the more we talk about it, the more I think how little they told us about the holocron. Because Vader was after that holocron in Rebels, which leads to, the famous I am no Jedi between him and Ahsoka. Yes,
Yep.
Ezra gets that holocron, but we literally only know that holocron's really powerful and it can power a battle station. And now that I think about it, it did explode, I guess, between when him and Maul were having their interactions. It may have exploded, but after that, there was no mention of it. So it could possibly be around because I think they were fairly hard to destroy. It's not like you could just, I'm going to break this and it's over.
You're not going to break it with the Force. This thing they're damn near indestructible.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So, with everything we've discussed, it's now come the time to power rank this thing. And from our conversation, from the power it wields, both physically and mentally, I'm curious, what is your ranking from S to S tier as being the absolute tippity top reality warping device, to F tier being a Foon, Spork, and knife set from El Pollo Loco? What is this thing?
In all of lore, in all of geekdom lore,
in the Nerdiverse, not just in Star Wars, but in all of pop culture,
I'm going to have to give it. And what's the third tier?
Okay, let's say
I should have saw this before.
No, let's go. S tier is like Infinity Gauntlet, almost like, reality warping, universe destroying entity. And let's say A tier is like,
so it's A, B, C, D, E, F.
A, B, C, D, E.
Okay.
A, B, C, D, E,
the
F.
S the S at the top confused me.
S is like God tier. You know what I mean?
I am going to give the Sith Holocron a straight up C plus. C plus. The reason being is because not all Sith Holocrons are made equal. You got one that can run a battle station. You got one talking about a planet and, the Sith's life where he didn't do too much. You know what I mean? So also the fact, well, you know what? I'm going to up it to a B minus because it can seep. It can seep. So if you are the unlucky soul that comes walking up on a Sith Holocron and it decides to grab you, it's much like that poltergeist moment where you're like, I don't want this anymore. And it's like, I'm not going away.
I'm not going anywhere. And that's where I'm at. I'm like, I understand that not all Sith Holocrons are created equal, but it really is a crapshoot on what you come across. You could, like you said, you can come across one where it was just some Sith nerd who really loved listening to music, and that's what his Sith crowd, or it's powering you up to become a galaxy threat. You know what I mean? You just don't know what you're going to get. So I would have given it like a B, like an A, I got A just on influence. You gave it a B minus. Would you meet me in the middle and say this is a solid B, a B tier threat?
I can move up to a B simply because there's a lack of usage within Star Wars that we've seen and heard about. We get glimpses, but not a full package. So yeah, I'll give it a B. We can move up to a B.
100. You heard it here first, folks. We're gonna have a lot of lore episodes, and we're gonna have a season of 12. And at the end of the day, we're gonna rank them all. We're gonna do a shuffling of all 12 items of power that we discuss. And speaking of that, as settling and setting with a B for the Sith Holocrons. So what I'm going to
B for
do,
Sith Holocron.
B for Sith Holocron. I'm with that. I'm with that. We're going to run a poll. We're going to pick 4 objects of power, and I'm asking you, the Nerdiverse, to choose which one you want us to do next. And depending on the results of that poll, that's the next lore item that we're going to discuss, and then rank against the Holocron to see where it falls on this power tier ranking. We're going to continue to collect these until we collect all the gems of the Infinity Stone, snap our fingers, and MOTN would have taken over the galaxy.
I mean, anything that's going to rank above a B is something I want to get out of my chair and go get now if it was made available to me. You know what I mean? And it's like if you told me there was a Sith Holocron down the street, yeah, I'm going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Dude, these take a shot. You know, it's like, you know, an asteroid lands in your backyard. You're not going to go poke it. You don't know.
No, you don't know.
It could be the Blob. It could be a Green Lantern ring. You just don't know.
Next thing you know, I'm like, yeah.
You ever seen Slither? You ever seen Slither? You go poke it.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you become a gelatinous blob of death and destruction. Or you find a Guyver and become a fighting henshin, a go-go man. You know what I mean? Or lady. So you go for it, right?
Absolutely, man. 100%.
I go for it.
Whatever jumps in front of you, if it's B level, if you got to work for it, you know what I mean? If you're D, F.
There's going to be some C, D, F things. We're not going to keep it all God tier. Like I said, we're going to, the belt of Pootie Tang may be a topic if you choose it. Because that's a pretty enchanted object, if you ask me.
That's funny.
Brian, where can we find you?
You can find me at Brian J. Wash, and you can also find me on eBay at Wash's Shop or Rebels Collectibles Archive. And thank you for having me.
Get stuff from Brian, yo. You may look up one day, he may have a used Sith Holocron for sale.
Yeah.
If it was about arts and crafts, he didn't need it. So
that you'll have, yes.
Yeah,
yes. It will not be a B level Sith Holocron for sale.
No, it's gonna be, it's gonna be like getting like those it's like getting trading cards. They're not all gonna be Jordan rookie cards. No, it's gonna be some. So it's gonna be a C tier Holocron he finds. It's the one on pottery. Sith pottery.
Learn about Sith pottery. You know what? We used to eat out of these bowls.
The dark side of the spoon. The dark side of the spoon. Brian, it's been amazing having you on. There's going to be many more episodes with you. Like I said, you've been here in this Nerdiverse since about its inception, and you've been a genuine delight. So it's good to talk with you. It's good to fellowship with you, and here's to many more. Right.
Hey, thanks for having me, and bring me in anytime. I always love to talk a little Star Wars and a little Nerdiverse. So
you got it. Thank you so much, Nerdiverse. With that, you can find us on YouTube. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us about your ideas of Sith Holocrons. Tell us about what particular artifact of power you would like us to discuss. I'm going to get a lot of my ideas are going to come from you. They're going to come from your responses. So please let me know in the comments below. I'm going to use that as a basis to create that list. So please do that on YouTube. If you're on with us on Spotify, check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and of course our website, mastersofthenerdversecast.com. I've been, of course, your host, Mike G. He's been Brian. We would like to thank you for your time and talk to you later. Adios.